Hello and welcome to Property Matters, a weekly look at all matters property designed to be of interest to anyone who has an interest in property. And Property Matters is sponsored by Fairview Property Consultancy and Town and Country Property Auctions London. And we love it, as you know, to get involved in the show with the topics that we're discussing each week. Some really interesting ones for you today. So please don't be shy, get involved, put your comments beneath the video wherever you're watching us today. And don't forget to hit that subscribe or belong button, whatever you want to call it, on the channel that you're watching on today, because we want you to get the notifications of when we go live each week so you can join us whenever you wish. And don't forget, of course, our email address if you want to get in touch, propertymatterstv@gmail.com. Joining us as always, and jubilant this morning, I suspect, after a very heady night last night, it is Mr. Joshi. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Paul. Good morning. Yeah, good morning, everyone. And we, of course, wake up to England winning 4-0. Amazing game. I'm not a huge football guy that sits there, but I thoroughly enjoyed it and see that our boys are. I don't want to really say the line that they all been saying, but because I think they jinxed it. But apparently it's coming home.
Absolutely.
And long overdue. 1966 seems to be a long time ago. So let's see if it all happens over the next week or so. So excellent news as far as that's concerned. But of course, we're here with Property Matters because we only like to talk about property, because property does matter. It matters in every shape. And funny enough, even while football's on, it matters where you are, where your home is, and where you're going watching.
Indeed, exactly, and it's interesting actually to hear people speak and saying it's just even females talking about the fact that they're really excited about it because it's just something good to happen to us all after such a long time in lockdown. So let's hope, fingers crossed, it all happens. We've got some interesting stories to talk about today, not least as it's the beginning of the month, of course. The Zoopla UK House Price Index monthly report is in, and we have the latest data and analyse it all for you, and there's some fascinating facts in there today. The figures haven't changed a lot in terms of the overall look, so house price growth has now peaked out for the last year to June to 4.7%. That's the annual rate of growth in a year. So almost 5% growth on your property in a year. Demand for homes is up 26%, and the flow of new homes continues to be a problem, and that's what's underpinning the prices, of course. So let's just have a look at it in a little bit more detail. So this time last year, your house was worth 2.2, it was growing at 2.2%, should I say. Now it's 4.7, as I say. And in Wales, that's 7.1%. And in Yorkshire and Humberside, it's 6.2%. In the cities, it's going up. So Liverpool, 7.9, Manchester, 7.2. Even Rochdale peaking at 9.9 and Bolton at 8.7. And good old Hastings in the south going by 8.2%. One of the cheapest places to buy if you're looking to buy in the southeast, by the way. So what's interesting, Joe, is that the buyer demand has moderated. So in May that they saw, because obviously you're not going to be able to get the stamp duty holiday in May, not these days. So a lot of people were done and dusted in terms of getting their contracts out the way earlier in the year so that they could meet that June deadline. So things did taper off, of course, in May, as it would do. Still very high compared to the year ago and in recent years, of course. But the search for space among the home buyers and the first-time buyers and the lifestyle changes people have been making, and of course the cheap money and all the other incentives has meant that the rates were elevated. But the thing was that there was just 24% less homes available to buy. So there's been a real shortage of the right homes for people. And that's kept the prices high and added another £10,000 on the year to your average house price, which is now £229,300. So interesting, kind of what we already knew, Joe. But one thing that perhaps you might want to comment on is the fact that the price growth has actually lifted the number of homes in the stamp duty brackets up higher. So 1.8 million homes are now in a higher stamp duty bracket because of all this price inflation.
Yes, interesting. I'm glad to see you haven't lost your touch on your graphs and
got plenty for you here.
Charts and things, Paul. It's obviously that time of the month where you like to throw that test in about what the market's doing. And
yep.
Thank you for that. Excellent stuff there, really. just underpins and confirms all of my views and thoughts that there is no better investment than your home, irrespective of where it is. Doubling in percentages from last 2% up to 4.7% this year already just goes to show that there is a great investment in your homes. And certainly this thing about the stamp duty, I mean, because the stamp duty came to an end on the 30th of June for up to £500,000, what that has actually done is, of course, increase the value based on supply and demand, because the demand has been huge and the supply has been limited. The reason why the supply has been limited is that there is.
Joe, I think you've actually muted yourself. Your microphone is muted. I think somehow that's got, maybe it's on the tripod. Do you want to log in again, Joe, and I'll continue to give some information. If you just log in again, we'll go from there. So let's get Joe back on the line. No pressure. Here he is already. Look, that's quick. You there, Joe? Yeah, let's have a look, see where we are. No, he's not there yet. It's live, folks. It's live. I'll wait for him to come back in again. Let's see if we can give you some more information. So here he is. No, there's something wrong there. I'm not sure what's happened. See how we can get on with that. So let's just have a quick look at some of these stats here. He's there, I think. No, he's lost again. Right, well, let's just carry on and see how we can get on with some of this information. So there he is.
I'm back.
Yes, I don't know what happened there.
Well, the same person rang me last week in the middle of it all.
That's not good.
I'm going to have to put a bar on their phone next.
Yep, block their number.
They're blocked, mate. Life is over for them.
Yes.
It just goes to show that we're live. You see, it's all real.
Absolutely.
Sunday morning we get up and we do this as our commitment for property matters and for our audiences to give them all that factual information right on the spot as we talk about it. So sorry, I'm going to go back to my little sermon about how house prices and the reason why the stamp duty and the shortage of property came is because there's been uncertainty in people's minds as to whether they're going to move or when they're going to move, and also where the right moves are going to be. And in May, from May to June, obviously there was a slight lull because at that time there was the uncertainty of whether they're going to continue the stamp duty. So there has been sort of the ups and downs. But to underline it all, the surety of it all is that basically it's very important for people to understand that this is still the best form of investment there is going to be, and the graphs have been showing that.
Yeah, we were talking about the 1.8 million homes moving into a higher stamp duty bracket. Here's the detail behind it. So a year ago, the purple line, 3.8 million homes were under 125,000. Now that's down to 3.2 million. So 600,000 homes have leapt into the next bracket, which is 125 to 250. And then you can see that 300,000 homes have come out of the 125 to 250, and they've moved up into what is the biggest growth area, the 250 to 925 thousand pound homes. So 11.8 million homes now sit in that bracket, and there was a small adjustment of just 100,000 homes on the 925 to 1.5 million. So there's no doubt about it that property continues to be something that you're going to have to stretch yourself to afford, because ironically, although the prices are going up, the tax on those properties is going to be going up as well by definition of the price increases. So it's just the carrot moving further forward, isn't it, Joe?
Yeah, and of course, if you look at that carrot moving forward, and you say to yourself that you've saved some money through the stamp duty, and of course now the house prices have gone up. The way I see that, Paul, is that look at the I've always used my own little terminology that you gauge wealth by the value of your home. And here it is that you've got now equity, maybe another £10,000, £12,000 equity in your property, because obviously the house prices have shifted up forward. So whilst you made a saving at one side, you've actually increased the value on the other side, which has given you more money back in your pocket. So you've not just saved the money for the stamp duty, but you've actually now gained equity in it, and it still gives you. So that probably doesn't relate in the graphs, because that is like the hidden saving, if you know what I mean. So the main thing is that it just goes to show that it's still the right investment to make, even though with all the things that have been happening throughout the last 18 months through the pandemic, um, the surety has been given. You know, it's a cornerstone of our life, owning our home or investing in some form of property.
Indeed. And if you look at the regions, this is another interesting thing here. So the little purple dots is the price growth across the year from May 21, sorry, to May 21 from May 20. So the purple dots show that Wales and, as we said, Yorkshire, North West, East Midlands, West Midlands, and gradually you can see going down. And for the seventh month in a row, London is the lowest at 2.2% growth year on year. But if you also then look at the dotted rectangles, you can see that despite the fact that London is underperforming right now, look at the growth over the 10-year period from 2011 to 2021. You can see that London, on the far right there, although it's only grown 2.2% in the last year, has grown 19.7%, outperforming all the other regions of the UK in the last 10 years. So London's still a good bet, Joe.
And going forward, as soon as the pandemic's over and we're allowed to fly back and forward freely, I think you'll find that that graph in London will extend even further, primarily because we have been closed off to a international audience for now almost a year, give or take. Though 10,000 people still managed to slip through the net, and have been quarantining for 14 days in nearby hotels. It's still not enough to push the house prices up, but they will, when the real people come in and start to sort of look at those things, they will see that that investment will go up. And as though London's been slow at growing this time, because London is just not a local market, it's an international market. Having said that, it's a great time for first-time buyers and young people to really look into London. And that is the new audience, I believe, because the pandemic has actually made people think about their life, and the race for space, as we've called it, has been out. People have been shifting out quickly and trying to find the countryside, the garden, and working from home. But the younger generation, I believe, are not sort of quite smitten with the idea of a race for space. They're not ready for the countrysides and the slippers under the bed type of situation. They want still to order their takeaway from their mobile phone, even though they live across the road from the takeaway. They want to be they want to be in the hustle, the bustle, the centre, the clubs, and so forth. And so this is a great time, great opportunity for young first-time buyers to try and find that, because that price will run away. Give it another 6 months, a year, you will find that gap will start to get bigger. So I would certainly recommend, where possible, that they can. Not forgetting, of course, stamp duty up to £250,000 is still zero until September of this year. So, take that on board. There are bargains at the lower end. I'm not saying they're going to be the best things, but if you're putting your first step on the run of the ladder and you can get an opportunity, albeit maybe a studio or a one bedroom, not necessarily in the centre of London, but on the outskirts of London, even parts of Essex, parts of Kent, which sort of border in, Berkshire, Buckinghamshire, all of these areas that have sort of edges that fall in, they are there. I have to say that it's probably a challenge around the West London side of things, but certainly north and east, there is more scope for those still to step in and buy. And of course, if you want to go to the coast, then of course Hastings is definitely a good bet.
What's interesting is the conclusion that they're making, because there's been this big talk, and we debated this many times in the early part of the year. Would the housing market fall off a cliff at the end of June when the major benefit of the stamp duty holiday ceased? And there was those doomsayers and soothsayers that would say no, we're not. It's not going to happen, or it is going to happen, etc. And they've come to the conclusion, and this is really interesting, that there is a group of people who've already decided to make their move, and they've made their move, and they've moved on and found their space and done whatever they needed to do, encouraged by the stamp duty holiday, encouraged by other incentives, low rate finance, etc., etc., etc. So they've done their business. But they're also concluding there is a bunch of people, and this is why there's been a shortage of properties, because people are sitting on where they are, making sure they know what the situation in the future looks like for them. So there is a bunch of people who are looking to return to work very shortly. Their employer is talking to them now about what kind of working conditions they want for them. Will they be hybrid? Will they be working 2 days a week at home, 3 days a week at home, and the rest in the office? Will they have to go back to the office? Will they be totally from home all the time? Will they have the choice, etc.? And those people are waiting to see what their employer says, and they will make their move when such times as they know what the future looks like. And they believe that that group of people will do that in the second half of this year, and that's going to provide a boost to the housing market when they feel that they want to move, and they think that'll release quite a bit of property to give the stock available, which is an interesting concept, isn't it, Joe?
Well, the truth is, Paul, that I never believed that it would fall off the edge of the cliff. I think that there is a lot more. What we are fortunate and blessed by in the property industry is that it has had a continued steady flow even throughout the pandemic time, because it had made people think about their lifestyles and the way they're thinking and what they're going to do. And of course, now that from the UK's point of view, we gradually come towards that time where lockdown and so forth comes to an end. There are many, many decisions that have been sitting on the edge that will be taken. As you rightly say, it's about the quality of life and weather. And a lot of companies, of course, haven't now really realized that they don't need such big offices and such big premises. It's taken the pandemic in a way to make them realize that that's it's a bit like the treadmill. You keep thinking, you keep running, that's the right thing to do, but sometimes you've got to come off of it. And what the pandemic did is take us off of that treadmill, make us stop and think about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it. And now major decisions are going to be taking place, not just for companies but also their employees, because they don't need to be there all the time, because the internet has really helped everybody, especially with the online working and so forth. The ethos and the way we work has all changed. And in the next 6 months, that's going to change quite dramatically. And look at the retail business. I mean, unfortunately, another injury this week, when Gap turned around and, closed, I think 79 or 80 of their stores, because everything has gone online and people are buying and shopping. Yes, there is a breed of us that would like to go and touch, feel, and see what we're buying, but the next generation are so used to having things just delivered and dropped off, and it doesn't matter. It's become the norm. That is the norm of shopping now. And with that in mind, all the employment rules and regulations are changing, and how people work are going to change, and that then will affect how they live, and where they live will change. But I certainly think the younger generation, there is a window of opportunity, of coming onto the property ladder whilst this uncertain time for bigger corporations come, and how the older generation now begin to think about how they're going to work, where they're going to live, and how their future holds. So, behind every cloud there's some sort of silver lining.
At the bottom of the graph that you can see on the screen that we looked at about affordable regions, interestingly at the bottom in the pink is the income that you need to actually be able to afford to buy these properties. So what they've done in this survey is they've assumed that you've got a 15% deposit and that you've got a mortgage at 4.5 times your income. So they've worked out that if you buy in places like Rochdale and Bolton, where they are generally the cheapest properties, that you'd only need to have around £25,500 per annum to buy that as an income, between 25 and 35 basically. The average UK property, so this £229,300 property that everyone talks about, you'd need 43,300 as your income on average to be able to afford that. Interestingly, we mentioned Hastings earlier on, and we're all off to Hastings to have our own little battle later on this morning because we're going to go and look for property there. Because apparently, if you buy in Hastings, you only need to earn 47,100 per year to be able to afford a property there. And if you compare that, Joe, to just down the road in Brighton, where the property prices obviously are significantly higher, you'd need 71,000 as an income to be able to afford in Brighton. So we're off to have a battle of our own later in Hastings, aren't we?
Absolutely, and it's not that far, really. I mean, it's not probably even a mile difference if you think about it. It's all on the same juncture or road and so forth, and it's all coastal, and we all like to, go to the seaside. And I think, yeah, absolutely, I think we'd be all having a battle in Hastings to see who can buy the cheapest or the quickest property. And £47,000 sounds like a drop in the ocean by comparison, doesn't it, Paul? When you say it like that, you only have to earn
Yeah,
£47,000
it's
to do
still a
that.
high
But
income
it's still a
for many.
huge income
Yeah,
when considering. I think the average income in the United Kingdom is probably somewhere between 25 and £30,000. So it still takes you to a couple or people together
yeah, yeah.
to do that.
You
But
need
the
to buy
interesting thing,
together.
yeah, that's right. Are you doing a shimmy there or something? What are you doing?
Yeah,
Some
yeah.
sort
I'm just
of,
moving from foot to
some sort
foot.
of is coming home or something? Is that the next thing that you're doing?
I'm just
Um,
limbering up for the game on Wednesday.
That's what you're doing. You're getting all worked up for that. But the good thing is that you have to remember when buying, on every mortgage application, you are certainly allowed to have up to four people to buy together. So never ever have that thing, oh, I've got to do this by myself. Sometimes, it's good to buy with your brother or sister. I know there's always an argument with siblings who's going to do it. But, if you want to get on the step of the ladder, on that run of the ladder, you've got to, kind of, have that loving feeling and maybe buy with someone. And I always say half a loaf is better than no dough. So at least you've got something to go work for. So £47,000 is still no small fry, but in the south, on the coast, Hastings is getting a good mention today. I better
Yep.
go and look and invest a few, otherwise, because house prices are about to go up in Hastings. Next graph we will show you is house prices after our show went up in Hastings, and if we don't buy, Paul, there's a problem.
They conclude by saying we are actually going through a once in a generation reassessment of the home, and that's what's taking place at the moment. That's a really interesting debate, isn't it? And thinking that we need to look at what we have, and the pandemic has caused that situation to occur. We're reassessing exactly what our needs are as families. And we will look back on this, and they will certainly talk about this in history lessons in the future for our children.
Definitely, and this is a huge change that has gone on, and just in everyone's life. Forget about just the property side. I mean, there's unbelievable changes that have gone on in the last 18 months. We've done things that we never thought would happen. We've been put in positions we never thought that would happen. We did things that we took for granted in our everyday life that somebody then came along and took away from you, and realize that you can't have this, you can't get out, you can't go here, you can't do this, you got to wear a mask, you got to wash your hands. It's just all these little things have started to, but that's become a way of life. Yeah, there is a generation change, but one thing is for sure with all of that. So even we go through that journey, where we live, what is our home, how we live has also become the underpinning. And whilst we've done that, other industries that are related to our home have continued to survive and work through. So, we go back to the war when we came out of the war. And funny enough, by the way, it's American Independence Day, it's 4th of July today. So, happy Independence Day to our American fellows there. But the reality of it is that, all these changes continue to happen. And we've got to be, we've adjusted well. We've adjusted well. It's been a painful time, but property does matter.
It certainly does, Joe. Bob's been on. Morning, Bob. four people can buy. Joe's absolutely correct, but not all lenders take four incomes, but they have some if that's for interest. So nice little plug for Bob this morning. Thank you, Bob, for clarifying that for us. And what about interest-only mortgages when you first buy your property? Now that's an interesting one because obviously we've been talking about assuming that you've got a 15% deposit and 4.5 times the income, but of course that would make it even cheaper. But of course, it's all very well paying the interest, but if you're not realizing the implications of that, you're going to have a big bill at the end of it, aren't you?
Yeah, look, Paul, that is a massive, massive hole. I really can't see how anyone's actually got around to dealing with that. Back in the days, in my younger days, we were all selling mortgages with, and Bob will probably come straight back to me on that in a minute, with endowment policies and all sorts of protections and so forth, because the idea was that your endowments would grow over and above the value of the mortgage in trading times. It was rubbish. It never happened. In fact, in difficult times, whatever endowments they had, people cashed them in very, very quickly because that lump sum helped them through their journey. So now what's happened is there is no mechanism at all that is put in place, nothing that people trust or believe and understand that is there to be able to see that part. The repayment mortgage is just beyond help. I mean, it's just a ridiculous amount of money that they want to have. So if you think that £47,000 as a rule of thumb is someone that need to have a certain, what they need to pay back under repayment is almost double what they would pay on interest only. So the only way that they're actually calculating is that they hope that the value of the home as time goes on increases sufficiently for them at the end of their 25-year life journey on that particular mortgage, if they stayed in the same place, would end up saying, well, actually, I bought it at £250,000. Maybe that house is now worth £400,000, and I'll be able to clear my interest-only mortgage by paying it off that, and I'll have a couple of £100,000, which has been the return. It's still better return and investment than those lousy endowment policies that were sold left, right, and centre on the hope that they would do it. So that then moves those people into other areas, not areas that they want to be, but at the wrong time of life. And moving is very important at the right time of your life. And so people now, I mean, I had a discussion with a lady recently, and she's lived in the Bucks area all her life, schooled in the area, but of course has that particular issue with this interest-only mortgage. So the plan is, this is the plan that she was having a conversation with me, is that she'll sell here and move up to Lincoln, but there's no family there. So she said, but I'm doing it because, if I don't do it, my mortgage ends soon and I'm not going to get a mortgage because I'm at a certain age now. So what do I do? So the only plan that she can do is to sell the property that she's living in and then move completely out of the way. So where she can go and buy with the balance, maybe a cash property, and have her remain the year. That's not right. That's not how people.
And that's a drastic solution to a problem, isn't it? But you can.
It is.
The trouble is, as you rightly say, it's very difficult to get another mortgage. In your example, there, if you get a couple of £100,000 at the end of it, and you're in your 60s, how you're not going to be able to buy anything other, not even a studio flat for 200,000. So you've still got a big problem at the end of even if you sell the property. You pay off your mortgage, but you've still only really got the difference that the price growth over the years. You haven't got enough to go and do something else.
Which is why they end up going to another part of the country, and that is equally unhealthy, and also not good for mental health, because when you at a certain time of life are shifting your whole lot up to an area that you don't know, or you because that's what finances are made you do, then you're having to start almost again. And if you're not a well person and you don't have, you have health issues of any sort, that comfort of having family and friends around you and all of a sudden being isolated in the middle of nowhere because that's what it's made you do, is wrong. So there isn't a solution, which is why, to a large extent, a lot of people went down to the buy-to-let market and hoping that they would have a income or another form of income in order to substitute some of these things that they were doing. But of course, the taxman loves that as well.
So here's a suggestion then. So what about if a couple goes for an interest-only mortgage for the first couple of years just to get on the ladder, get the affordability? It's a thought, isn't it?
Yeah, but the problem is, it's a great thought, Paul, and I think everybody loves it. But we get comfortable, and it doesn't work for 2 years. So in two years, actually, in a lifetime is nothing. When you think we've just done 18 months of pandemic, and we've had the ups and downs. 18 months have whizzed by, irrespective of what's happened, how it's happened. For 2 years, you go and buy a property on interest only. You just got your feet, not even under the table. We just started. So 2 years is nothing. 4 or 5 years down the road, you're stuck with a situation. And then you
And
try and sell, and that's the cost. It's the cost of the moving, and then the stamp duty, which is why stamp duty has continued to have this huge coverage. Our program for the last 6 months should have been stamp
stamp
duty
duty matters.
rather than property matters, because stamp duty has dictated how people think.
Yeah. So and the truth of the matter is that there's always going to be that huge leap in monthly cost. The moment that you go on to repayment, you might have had a couple of years to get yourself going, but you're still going to have to face that jump in monthly cost. Bob says interest-only mortgages are making a comeback. Lenders have minimum income requirements and also minimum equity requirements, which is important to mention, and suggests that interest-only is okay up until about the age of 40, but after that you've got to be really careful, which is another good point, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bob, thank you for that. It's very encouraging to have your support in this, and I think you're absolutely right. There has been, and I've been continuing to try to tell people there's a certain time, there's a cut-off time when you can and you can't afford to make that move, and it doesn't really make sense in the conversation at the time. But when it actually happens, they look back and go, actually, we should have done it at X, Y, Z time, and now it's too late. But there still isn't a sufficient mechanism out there. And whilst the government have done amazing things with a lot of things that we've been doing, they still haven't, if Rishi is watching this, because I know Rishi likes to watch my program every week, he should really bring on board some other mechanisms so that people can, start to think about how they're going to repay these mortgages. Because the burden, guess where, Rishi, is going to be? It's going to be back on you, because you know what? You're going to have to help them out. You're going to have to bail them out, because, you can't make people homeless at the end of their interest-only mortgage and then say to them, actually, you got to sell your house. Well, if somebody's, suffering from a terminal illness, how are you going to do that? Then the morality is going to come in, and they're going to say, well, that's the wrong thing to do, and then they're going to go to the government. So, Rishi, sort it, mate. It has to be done.
Bob says he nearly got sacked for not selling endowments because he didn't believe in them.
That's me. I didn't believe in them either, Bob. I had no faith in them, because as far as I was concerned, back in those days, as much as I hate to admit it, it was a commission. Where salespeople are salespeople. They'll sell what we need to sell. But if you actually look at the moral side of it, it was not long before it started to make no sense. I think the first 5-10 years, and you could see that the endowments weren't doing what they were doing, and there was lots of skullduggery going on. And if you look at it not from our point of view, because we just sold the product, but the insurance companies that were doing them, or the city that was trading on them, you could see it, potentially, but nobody done anything about it.
No, that's right. I think Bob should get a new strap line for Chess Mortgages, the money lender with morals. There we are, you see.
You're in.
Take that one for free, Bob.
Come on, join
no
us
problem.
next week.
Right, let's move on. A third of home. Well, we mentioned stamp duty. We've got to keep on with stamp duty, of course, just for a little while longer. Just interesting, though. A third of homeowners would consider moving more regularly if the stamp duty holiday on the first 500 of a home purchase became permanent. So the suggestion is here that there'd be 350,000 more transactions per year. And this is what the new research commissioned by Jackson Stops agency has found out. Britons believe that they would move more often if they had no stamp duty to pay on the first 500,000. More importantly, they're very, very in favour, and this could be a really good electioneering promise for a party that decides to take it up. There's a great deal of, across all age groups, interestingly, a great deal of support for removing stamp duty for first-time buyers. It's an interesting thought, isn't it, Joe?
I would certainly endorse the idea that for first-time buyers, that stamp duty up to £500,000 should be completely removed, because they are the livestock. They're our foundation stone. First-time buyers, we need them to be able to get on that first run of the ladder and start the system going, because without them, to a large extent, the process in the United Kingdom is not successful. First-time buyers are the blood and the sweat of our whole property market. So I think it's important that the government, whoever the government is, but we know who they're going to be for a while, because there's not much of an opposition at the moment. So they've got to try and say, well, they've done well in this situation. They need to get in there and for the first time buyers, abolish up to £500,000 of stamp duty, and then the rest of it would work. For the rest of the people, obviously, if they get equity. Now, if you look at just the figures that we've been talking about over the last half an hour or so, stamp duty between £0 and £15,000 has been the saving. But funny enough, house prices have gone up in that same time, probably by about £10,000 to £15,000. So whilst they made a saving, they've actually made an investment earning, equity increase in the value of their home, because that's what the market forces have done. So that's good for second time, third time, fourth time, sales. But for the first time buyer, they need to start that. And so I would certainly encourage the government to consider that. And I agree with that idea.
What was interesting was the 18 to 34-year-olds, 20% of them were encouraged by all the publicity and the hype around the stamp duty holiday. 20% of that age group, very young really in terms of house buying terms, were encouraged to go and either look and consider moving into a property of their own, or actually went and did it. So that was quite an interesting number of that age group were actually thinking, well, let's see if we can get on this ladder. We won't have a better opportunity. And to a certain extent, that's been true, because with low rate finance and government incentives and help to buy schemes, etc., there's never been a better time, has there really?
Quite honestly, there has never been a better time for any first-time buyer to step on the run of the property ladder, especially with the stamp duty saving, and also especially for people that want to move into places like London, which were way beyond their reach. But because there has been the international market has just been quiet, it's given them the chance to get in there and look at it. So I still think that behind every cloud there's a silver lining. Here is a silver lining for the first time buyers. Here is an opportunity for you to get on the property market and look at it. Yes, of course, the renter and the investor, those guys are there. They do that because there is no other investment. In fact, by having a lot of buy-to-let people that continue to buy properties to rent out, is primarily not because they want to do it, Paul. They don't want to do it, really. I've met so many of my clients over the last year who really are quite happy to sort of say goodbye to their buy-to-rent let portfolio, because they're just they'd rather be on their yacht or on a Caribbean cruise, and enjoying the fruits of their labor than deal with someone's leaky tap or because the bulb doesn't work. But no choice, because there is nothing else for them to get involved in. And that, as long as that exists, there is going to be lack of properties for the first time buyer. But if we gave the investors another choice, something else to put their money into, I think that it will level out. But then, I can't do it all for them, Paul. I've been trying.
Well, let's just hope that Richie's there looking into it for us. Okay, let's have a quick look at. I suppose this will go under a word to the wise category. This one, if you are a buy-to-let landlord and you are looking to dispose of a property anytime soon, rules on your taxation position have changed from the 6th of April. Who knew? Because what basically happens now is that you have to report the capital gain to HMRC within 30 days of the sale. Whereas, of course, before you used to put it on your annual tax return, and they're charging interest at 2.5%, I think it is, per per month on that transaction from the date of 30 days onwards. So you're getting yourself into penalties, taxation penalties, interest payment penalties from 30 days after the sale. So the advice obviously is make sure that you report the sale and the benefit, the capital gain within 30 days of the property sale. So that's an interesting one and a heads up for anyone in that position.
Yeah, I mean, the government's always spent loads of money, and they're going to look to find anywhere possible way to regain that money as quickly as possible. And property is one of those things. Remember that there are two people that are definitely going to collect no matter what happens: the bank manager and the tax man. And no matter what time of life, you can run, but you can't hide, as they say. And so sooner or later, they're going to come and collect their money. And so, yeah, absolutely, it is one of those things that you've got to look at, and the rules are changing, and there'll be, I'm sure, lots of other rules that will try and bring them to you here at Property Matters. At least Paul will, because he likes these little nuggets but yeah, I think definitely worth thinking about. Very, very cautious to make sure that you've got enough money or you've made the right steps, because you don't want to be paying unnecessarily interest on the money, especially if you're selling. I think that was also the case, Paul, if I'm not wrong, that there was a time where you could roll this over to another property or to your following tax year, but now they've made that as if like it stops dead at the time of that particular property selling. So therefore, if you sold something now, you've got to pay for it now, as opposed to saying,
Mm.
well, I'll roll it into my overall taxation. So don't get caught out with that. I think it's quite important to check your position. Obviously, take advice from your accountants and your legal advice. But a good point to bring forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this next story could provide some property matters history, because I think this is the first story where we're going to absolutely disagree with each other. We've always pretty much been on the same page with every story, but this one I fundamentally disagree with you on, because we were talking about this before the show started. But I got to say that I just think this is the worst of behaviours. So Persimmon Homes basically being accused of predatory behaviour because they've insisted that anyone who buys a new home from them has to have their provided broadband service called FibreNest. And not surprisingly, the number of subscribers to FibreNest has increased from 6,000 to 14,000 in the past year. So an MP, Bill Esterson, a Labour MP for Sefton Central, said this is predatory behaviour. Persimmon, by the way, Joe, made 784 million quid in 2020. They don't need to become an internet provider, and they can't. The point that I think is wrong is that they can't choose the internet provider. They have to go with FibreNest, otherwise they can't have broadband. And that, to me, seems pretty shoddy.
So let's just break that down. First of all, they've done a lot of infrastructure in putting those homes up there. So they are right at the beginning point of having put that fiber net in, whether it's for themselves, their own operation, or for a another. If they don't do it, then the a another comes along and digs up the road, and all those potholes that you and I ruin our cars from are created by those other shoddy operators who dig the holes to get their internet fibers in. So Persimmon Homes, as a developer, obviously took good business advice to themselves and said, well, actually, we're going to do this for somebody else. We may as well put our own in. I don't think that they'll be committed forever. It's a business thing, and that's probably why we differ on it, because obviously my head says it's business, and yours is saying it's morality. From a moral point of view, they don't need the money and they're making enough. But there's no such thing as enough in any business. But I think they won't be committed forever. We haven't looked at the small print, but I can't imagine that they can do it. And also, after a certain period, I'm sure somebody else could come in and don't need to dig out the road. I mean, Sky, I think they just bring it from the satellite dishes from the top. So there's always another way. But it's money that you make while you're asleep, and that's probably why Persimmons are looking at it. And even though they've made a lot of profits on it, I think it's just another business venture. Though morally, Paul, I think you're right. They can't have it all. But financially and from a business point of view, if you were CEO of Persimmons, you will be arguing in a different way, I can assure you.
Well,
Otherwise,
of course, yeah.
your salary might be affected, and and therefore that's a business decision.
Well, essentially, they're creating a monopoly. That's the thing that's wrong about it. But
Yeah.
the point is that they're building a house and they're making a £784 million profit from making homes for people, which include obviously the laying into the streets of the cabling that comes from the providers such as BT and others. So that gets it up to the door of the property. What happens from the door of the property is then the responsibility of the owner of that property, and isn't the responsibility of the builder, in my opinion. You put the you have BT obviously put the line into the home. The socket is put on the wall where the purchaser wants the socket. They agree that with all of the finer detail when you buy the property. They put it in where you want it, and then you have the opportunity to buy your services. I don't understand how Internet Explorer and Microsoft got into so much trouble by making it a monopoly to use a browser and got into so much trouble around the world. Whereas these guys, and it does say in this article that they are following the law. They're not breaking any law by doing this, but they're not playing fair, is what people are saying. So it's interesting that they're not getting into trouble for creating effectively a monopoly, and others have. I don't understand that.
Yes. Well, we're not going to solve that one here, but you know.
Should we call that a one-all draw?
Oh, we'll do that. Yeah.
Talking of which, he says, smoothly moving into the final story of the day. How about this for a story, everyone? An estate agent pledges to sell or let your property for free if England win the Euros. So this is a London agency called Living in London, I think they're called. Yes, Living in London. George Maloney, who's the head of property acquisitions, coming up with a great marketing coup, saying that if you've signed up with them for either a purchase or a letting between the beginning of the competition, which was June the 11th, and July the 11th, then if England win the Euros, that property will not be charged any sales or letting fees. That's a good ruse, isn't it, Joe?
I think it's it's a good marketing thing to do, and God willing, we get the results and we bring it all home. And it's a good way of trying to win more business. But of course, the caveat, of course, in there is that they would have instructed them from the outset. Now, nobody actually probably had that plan. And so it's a purely good marketing story that's what they're saying. But if they'd actually started it and said that if you now instruct us from day one of the Euros, and by the way, this is the journey, that's great. But this story is broken out only now that we're almost, we've got it. We've got it in our hand and we're bringing it home, as they say. And now people want to do that. But I
It
think
does.
every opportunity there is to market your company using the football. I think everyone's doing it.
It does say subject to terms and conditions, and you have to
There
be
you
sole
go.
agency for that, just to put all of the small print out there. But did think that was quite appropriate considering. And I did think last night, actually, as I was watching the game, I do hope England win this game. Otherwise, I'll have to withdraw this story from the programme.
I know. Yeah, rather rapid.
So luckily, it did work out, and we could leave the story in. I've got talking of the race for space and moving to the coast as we were earlier on. We're not talking about a property in Hastings. We're talking about a property in Torquay, Joe, aren't we? Adelphi Road.
Torquay, Adelphi Road. What a lovely little place, really. A great opportunity for a jobbing
And look at the
builder.
view.
Hey, look at that. Yeah. I had to stand on the top of the roof to get that one, by the way. Um,
Health and safety nightmare you are.
Health and safety. Yeah, it was a cherry picker that I had to drive down there and stand at the top with it and do the bit. No, what a lovely view, lovely property, great opportunity. It's an end of terrace property that has got planning permission to convert into 4 apartments, a couple of good big ones and maybe a couple of small ones, or to retain it back as a house. It has got hotel usage. In its lifetime, it has been a B&B, and of course, so great scope for someone who is a dab hand. 400,000 is our guide price. A great buy to let or a great what do they call it? Airbnb opportunity here. for someone to sort of, have their own base and rent out. And of course, I don't know if anyone knows or people have looked. Now that we've got staycation, room rent prices have gone absolutely through the roof. I was talking to somebody recently, and they said that a day of renting or a property in some of the coastal areas is £300-400, as opposed to when it was maybe £100. It's just gone 3 or 4 times fold, and they're booked out all throughout the summer holidays, because obviously most people can't make their plans at this moment in time to go away, so they're all staying around the coastal areas. If we tidy this one up, we could probably rent 4 rooms out, and there's potentially good money to be made. But a great opportunity. 400,000 is the guide price. And make me a bid. Make me a bid that I can't refuse. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's Torquay's it is a nice coastal town. It's not, one of the sort of particularly rundown ones. It's a nice location, and of course with that view there, that's fabulous. And 400,000 really in the grand scheme of things isn't a great deal, is it really?
Well, considering we've been talking about that as an average in some of the areas that
Yeah.
we're living in the west of London, central London, and to be honest with you, anywhere in the country now, it's great value, great opportunity. But yeah, I mean, for people that want to go there, space for race, race for space, as they say, even for space for race is good as well, but race for space, they're going to go straight there and be by the coast, and check the internet is not provided by Persimmon Homes, otherwise we'll be.
Other internet providers are available. And you wanted to get something off your chest this morning as well, didn't you?
Well, I just have to say that I've been pretty much born and bred in our hometown of Slough, and this week it's been completely shoddy to think that we're £100 million in debt, and the town is supposedly bankrupt. It's been all over the news, and I just think it's pretty appalling, considering the whole country has gone through pandemic, life-changing scenarios, and those that have been in charge of running a town close to Heathrow, which is the largest single employer in West London, on its own, and we're 100 million or 100,000, £100 million in debt, or bankruptcies happened. There was a recent article, just for the joke of it, that was sent out with Tan Desi on the front of it, making a plea for one of those charitable things where you raise money for, I can't think what it's called. It's on the internet, you can raise money for a charity, and they're saying Slough is now a charity, and it's just saddens me to think that the high street looks really rubbish. The town in general is done really well. Lots of new developments going on, yet the people that are operating it are, time for a change. But I can't even see that happening. But I'm sure the administrators have been called in.
Yes,
Very
it's
sad. Very sad.
I was seeing that there's the third such area to go into the similar situation. In Northampton and Croydon, I think it was as well, who've done this already. And I think the sad thing will be that, of course, inevitably there's going to have to be huge cuts to services, staff, and so on. So there's going to, that mismanagement has a real effect on people's livelihoods, people's jobs, etc., and the services that they rely on.
Well, on that bombshell, Paul, I have to tell you the good news. The good news is our rubbish bins in that area will be still collected.
Perish the thought we'd have a summer of discontent, wouldn't we? So I've just got a suggestion here to end the show today. Can we please have this great show as a podcast and a radio app? Thanks. Now there's a thought.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to get my skates on, aren't I?
Over to you on that, Mr. Allen. That's the third week running I've been asked that question. I said I will put it to our leader in this, so podcast, please.
Yes, well, I think that might be possible. We did talk about it originally, didn't we? Actually,
we did
talk about it. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, well, we'll see if we can get that going and see if I can get it up onto a platform, because we can take just the audio version of this, no problem at all. So let's see if we can do that. Good idea. Thank you, Facebook user, you friend of ours. Amit says, unfortunately, this is an endemic of national and local government for donkey's years. There are untold thousands of stories of wasted money on various. Yes, that's absolutely true, isn't it? Really, Joe? Can't really disagree with that
Well, you
from Amit.
can't, but it just saddens. This is when it's your hometown. That to me is
Yeah.
why I make the point. I get it everywhere else, but when you walk around and you're pretty much born and bred and schooled and supported the town, brought loads of people that live in the area, moved them in my nearly 40 years of service. It just saddens the day to see that some people are not operating it in the right way. That's all, and it's the locals that will suffer. The taxpayers, the guys that pay your rates and so forth, you guys are going to be the ones that are going to suffer because someone else has mismanaged the things that we pay for. But like I said, the assurity from the MP is that our rubbish bins will be continue to be collected, so that's good news.
And on that bombshell, let's end this week's show, shall we, Joe? Thank you very much, as always, to everyone for your contributions. Some great comments on the show today. Thank you for expressing your views with us. Thank you, Joe, for your wisdom, as always. And we'll see you for another Property Matters next Sunday, 10 a.m.